Welcome to Aaron, the Passive Investor. My name is Aaron and I am a passive investor. I invest in various types of index portfolios and I simply am trying to maximize my returns given the research and the data out there. Again, this isn't tax advice. This isn't financial advice. This video is simply explaining what somebody who's been investing for almost 2 decades on his own and actually using some of the products that I'm going to refer to here for well over a decade. I just simply want to give that nugget of information. So if you're a family member or friend, or maybe you're just somebody that's tuning into this online, stick around and see what a passive DIY investor is using in their tool belt in order to be able to not only have an investment account, but to have all the various tools that go along with actually investing. So getting into it, I just want to show you my screen here. I do have a website here, and this website actually shows you all of the different types of tools that I use depending on what it is that you're looking for. So if you're looking for market research and portfolio tools, you'll find that there. Investment accounts and planning, you can click that and find that there. And so I'm actually just going to show you my screen. I'm going to really highlight everything really quickly. And then I'm going to leave a link down to this website down below. As well, there are referral links and bonuses on some of the products. Some of them there's not. But if there is, I'll receive a incentive for you clicking on that as well. You'll receive a kickback as well too, which is fantastic. And so that's why I like to include those there. I'll never receive a sponsorship. So if you're somebody that's watching this and you want me to sponsor a video or something like that, I'll never do that because I want to remain neutral and unbiased all the time. I don't really care about that kind of stuff. I've got another business that I manage that actually, if I really just want to make money and, that's my end all be all goal, then that's what I would do as well. I'm a pastor, so I've got a high ethics standard. And so for me, I'm just simply showing you what I use and what I do. And that is that. So getting into it, here's 3 platforms that I have. I made a video on this. I'm going to leave a link up here, so I'm not going to get into that, but I will explain really briefly what I use here. So Interactive Brokers, I simply am using it for margin accounts, using complex things that essentially can't I can't achieve with something like my Questrade account. My Questrade account is good because I can have multiple types of registered accounts, which is extremely important. And to be honest with you, in a registered account, you're not really able to participate in a lot of the different types of complex stuff. So there's no point in really worrying too much about having that type of feature set. So that's why I don't really worry about something like Interactive Brokers. So Questrade seems to be the winner in that regard. And I use my Wealth Simple for regular, simple, emergency fund, short-term investing types of savings because it's very simple for Canadian stocks and ETF trades, and there's no fee with that. And so that's essentially what I'm doing there. Again, there's referral links down below as well. If you go to the website, you'll see that here. Other platforms that I use with regards to financial planning is I use a thing called Adviice. This platform is really good for retirement scenarios. Being able to know what you have in your CPP, your OAS, and different types of withdrawal timings, knowing the various types of registered accounts. There are softwares and tools that financial planners are using, and they are not letting people use those tools. It's like gatekeeping. And so I find something like Adviice is essentially opening up that platform of tools that we can use as DIY investors and actually assess what it is that we're investing in. And then what you can do is you can have a financial advisor review the types of strategies that you have and maybe enhance it a bit so that you can actually have a better DIY plan and that you don't have to pay to have a financial advisor managing your portfolio and offloading a huge chunk of your resources. Because once you get that advice and you have that in play, unless the dynamics of what you're doing changes, then what is the reason for that financial advisor? Again, not financial advice. Do your own research on this. This is what I found to be beneficial for me. So getting into it, we've got also Quicken Simplifi because budgeting software is beneficial for anybody, we should all be doing that. But the cool thing that I like about this is being able to download my transactions. And then the other thing that I like about it is I manually do this, but I like to keep track of all my investments, all of my assets. I like to keep track of my vehicles and my house and everything that I have, so I can pay attention to my overall net worth, and I can pull up various types of reports and such. And so that's really beneficial. So those are really good planning tools. Getting into the essential financial and security tools. These are tools that don't necessarily get talked about. Again, some of these have really big bonuses, like look at Simply Financial. Really beneficial for people to sign up for these types of services. So if you're wanting to get into a no-fee bank, Simply Financial is fantastic for that. I've used them. I've talked to them. I've talked to their support staff. I've had to basically buy a house and had to take that money out of my account, and had to get a check drawn, and you can't go into a branch with Simply Financial because they don't have one. A lot of it's online, but they actually can use things like CIBC, where you have to get those checks and they get printed and delivered there. And they can do these things really quick. I've never had many issues with this banking system, and I just love not having to pay fees. Again, if you end up having something bounce, obviously you're going to pay a fee for that. Or if you have a line of credit or a credit card and you have a balance owing, you're going to pay a fee on that. So, you obviously do your homework, but for the most part, there are no fees with this. And so I love that. Another product is Willful. So once you start getting into investing, it's very important to get into having a will. There's lots of different things that you can do to get a will out there. But for me, I just wanted to get started. I have a very young family. I have my wife and my 3 kids. So I need to have something in place, and I want to do something quick and easy. And so this is something that I'm using right now. Maybe when I get older, I'm going to find something where I go and talk to somebody and actually set a whole plan up. But for the most part, this is really easy. It was so quick and so friendly to do. It was very beneficial for me, and I really highly think that a will is a great thing to do when you are dealing with finances. Another area is security. Not only Malwarebytes for being able to use things like a VPN and being able to get into malware scans and being able to check for viruses. Those are all really important to do on a regular basis, but also setting up 2-factor authentication on all of your accounts. Going into that security setting and finding out what are the highest levels of security that I can put in place, because as your investments and your assets grow, you're going to want to have higher forms of security in those accounts. Those are not something to play around with. Maybe when you're young and you're not carrying as much, maybe it's not as big of a risk, but the risk increase as that happens. Again, you could even lose it when you have a small amount. So definitely put in some security measures. Another thing that I like to do when it comes to investing is pay attention to the news. I like a news aggregate, right? You could be like, oh, I like the Globe and Mail, or I like the Financial Post, or so for me, it's like I'd rather have Apple News, because then I can pay attention to all of the news in one place. I can actually find all the various types of publications, and I can even follow different trends or different things that I'm looking at that way. I can even use the stock app with Apple, and I can follow different types of indexes, different ETFs. I can follow the news, or the different stocks. I can follow the news on those individual things, just like you would in like Yahoo Finance. And it's one subscription for all of those things. And so that's what I find beneficial for Apple News. Now, when it comes to the stock app, I do not necessarily use that app to be able to look at all of my charts. I really enjoy using something like TradingView, because I can overlay that with different pieces of information like moving averages, RSI, the MACD, and different things that I actually want to pay attention to when I'm putting on various trades. Again, I'm more of a passive investor, so do I need to really pay attention to a lot of this? No, but I do know it. And when I am moving a chunk of money, I do like to pay attention to obviously the macro trends. Is this the right time to shift this type of portfolio to another portfolio? And then I usually like to look at some of the technicals. And so that's where TradingView has been beneficial for that. But for the most part, something like Portfolio Visualizer, if I'm looking at various portfolios, this is where I'm able to back test that. And I could run different simulations with retirement withdrawal type of scenarios specific to that type of portfolio, where using something like Adviice, where I'm able to look at my overall withdrawal strategy, right? That is something that I use mainly for being able to look at those simulations that way. But Portfolio Visualizer is good because I can actually look at a particular investment style, and I can actually, something that I actually created, right? Like where I can, basically take a model of a portfolio strategy, like the 3-fund portfolio, for example, or Ray Dalio's all-weather portfolio, and I can simulate it and kind of see what would it do if I was, in my retirement and wanting to have a certain withdrawal strategy. How long would that last? And so those are really cool things to have. So that's where Portfolio Visualizer is really good for me. And then getting into things like eDeltaPro, you'll notice that if you get into things like trying to use different tools like options and stuff like that, you're going to find that there really isn't data out there with TradingView and Portfolio Visualizer. So you need to have something. And so they back test different option strategies given different strategies that you did. A lot of people are using options to be able to hedge their investments, when the markets are, they're scared and they think the market's going to crash. That's one thing that people would use options for. There's different types of option strategies and plays that people do as a regular type of options play. And so that's really where I found it to be beneficial. And it's actually a little bit more user-friendly than some of the other platforms out there, like something like Options Alpha. There's a bit more of a learning curve for some people. So this is one that I think is probably a little bit more user-friendly for those types of investors, more of a passive investor. And then for crypto, I like using things like CoinMarketCap to be able to see where different types of coins are stacking. And I also like to look at, how much overall does Bitcoin have of the crypto market? How much does Ethereum have? You'll notice that Bitcoin at the time of recording this and Ethereum has over 80% of the market. So if you're an index investor based on market capitalization, really essentially owning Bitcoin and Ethereum kind of keeps the majority of the market right there, just like owning something like the S&P 500. But anyways, do your own research on this. And what I find is tracking different types of crypto that I'm actually kind of curious on, and just paying attention to some of the news. That's really the extent of something like CoinMarketCap. And then getting into crypto, if anybody's into crypto, again, like I'm saying, before I get into that, for the most part, what I found to be for myself is having my crypto in like tax-free savings account, RRSP accounts, if you have the room there, is really advantageous because you get to have that tax shelter. So that's really good. And so that's where, on the stock market, you're getting an ETF within, say, something like Bitcoin and Ethereum, which is essentially all that it really offers right now. There's not really a whole lot of options outside of that. But just getting into that crypto space, I find that is an easy way to be able to be diversified within the crypto space. Like when it comes to AI and things like that, a lot of the times when you're using these various portfolios and you're already taking advantage of that whole market, a lot of those companies are already, using that AI, like that are already creating the AI tools and stuff. So you're already somewhat invested in that. And, but when it comes to crypto, I'm not diversified in that. And so that's the easiest way, I would say, to invest in it. Sure, you have to pay, and you might be looking at it and say, well, I have to pay an MER, but you're also getting that tax savings. And for me, when I looked at those numbers, I found that the tax savings was a lot greater than that fee that I would pay. But that said, there may be other crypto projects you want to get into, or, maybe you just want to simply have some crypto held off to the side. Like some people, they have gold and cash sitting in a sock drawer. Maybe you want some crypto to be in that same sort of thing. And so it's kind of cool that you can do that with these types of investments. And so what I find is I like to have an exchange. So for me, I find that Coinbase is a really good exchange because they have a long reputation. There's been various bankruptcies and scams that are out there. And so getting into even some of the other ones that are mediocre and maybe they have a slightly reduced fee, maybe that's good for some, but for myself, I find this one to be really good. And here's a cool thing is I actually pay probably less than any of the other types of platforms out there, at least at the time of recording this video, because I can get things like USDC where I use their Coinbase advanced trade. And so I use that platform and I can basically put in my Canadian dollars into the account for free. And then I can actually take those Canadian dollars, buy USDC coin for free. And then I can shift that over to a self-custody wallet where I can essentially do some swaps and I can actually get my crypto that I'd like at a reduced fee using the DeFi protocols. And then I can put that into my cold storage wallet. And then that cold storage wallet can be socked away so that you have those investments socked away. Again, not financial advice, but something that I found to be really cool. Another interesting thing is when you start participating in DeFi and tax season starts rolling around, you might be going, oh shoot, how does that work from a tax point of view? I don't know how to categorize that. And that's where something like Koinly will take different types of earn programs that you have and be able to actually help make sense for what those types of transactions are from a tax point of view. So you can report those different transactions because, for the most part, if you start getting into a lot of DeFi protocols and stuff, you'll notice that there's a lot of moving pieces with those different wallets that you have. There's a lot of things that get juggled around. And so it's really hard to track that and write that with pen and paper. So having a tool like Koinly, again, is very beneficial for that type of thing. And if you're interested in any of these products, I do have affiliate links down below. Some of them are not affiliate links. They're just links directly to their sites because I'm not trying to find the highest affiliate programs that I can participate in or receive any sponsorships. I want to stay neutral and unbiased. So if you can click on a referral link, you'll receive a bonus and it'll help support this channel. So I would appreciate that. And if you're wanting more videos, just for me being able to go a little bit deeper into any of these tools or when I change and have other tools that I start using, then definitely subscribe and like this video so that you'll receive more of videos like that.